This video is intended to give an introduction as to how to interface between Github, a very useful tool for collaborative projects of various sorts, and the RStudio server at Amherst College. So I'm going to begin by assuming that there's a repository in place. This one you can see is a private repository that's set up for a test student. So GitHub, the easiest way of accessing it is on the web. We can start here by adding an issue for this fictitious student. If I click on Issues, this will give me the Issues tab. If I then click on New Issue, I can say we need to find a project topic for the class. Please review the syllabus and project information. So this is intended to be a way of tracking issues or problems or to-do items that will be happening throughout the use of this project. By clicking on Submit New Issue, this will get added as an issue. I can click here on the Issues tab and it'll show me that. And there's lots of other ways of kind of describing who's responsible for this, the assignee, what milestone, when it's due, lots of other features, some of which we'll be using. So again, this is a nice way to kind of be thinking about a to-do list. But there's lots of other ways we'll want to be accessing things within from the RStudio server, and we want to go ahead and actually have files that might be available. By default, the only file we have here is this file readme.md, which shows up. This is a test repository for a future student. So how would we actually proceed to go ahead and access this from the RStudio server? Well, the first thing we need to do is to go onto the RStudio server and add some additional keys to be able to use Secure Shell with GitHub. And we can find these by going under Tools in the Global Options. And we'll see here that there's a Git as SVN. And you can see here that I've actually gone ahead and created and uploaded a public key. So if I go ahead and click View Public Key, I can see the public key that's been set up and put onto GitHub. If you don't have one of these, you can go ahead and create an RSA key. When you do that, it'll actually prompt you for a passphrase, and that passphrase will allow you to kind of connect to GitHub in a much more straightforward fashion. So here now I'm going to click OK. And so I have that key, but if I hadn't already created that key, I'd need to go ahead and add it. I'd cut and paste and go on to GitHub. So if I go to GitHub and I click on Edit My Profile, you can see there's a place here where SSH keys are stored and put together. And this is the list of my existing keys, including one for the Amherst server. If this wasn't here, you would go ahead and click Add SSH key, and then go ahead and cut and paste that material as well as give the key a name. So let's assume that that's actually been done. How do we now proceed to make a local copy of this Stat495 test student repository on the RStudio server? Well, if we navigate on this main page for the repository to this area here, this will actually give us the right place to be able to grab a URL that represents the right repository in the right format. So we want to click on SSH for Secure Shell, and now go ahead and select that and copy it. That will actually give us the Secure Shell interface to this repository, and assuming that we have access to it through the settings, that it's ours, we can actually now go back to the RStudio server and say New, a new project in this case. The project I want to be picking at this point is a version control in Git. And now I can go ahead and cut and paste this, press Tab, that actually gives me the project directory name Stat495-test student. We need to make sure this doesn't exist already. It'll get confused if it does. I've gone ahead and said I want to create projects as subdirectories of my Git folder on my home directory. But now I'll go ahead and click Create Project. It'll actually give me this initialized empty Git repository, and it'll actually ask me for that passphrase. So if I go ahead and type the passphrase I used when I set up my SSH key, and you can see now this has gone ahead now and moved me into this repository with the same files that we had when we were actually accessing this via Git. If I click on this readme.md file, we can actually see this is that that title that says this is a test repository for a future Stat 495 student. I can say that this will be used to share issues, files, and other materials for the course. So now I've gone ahead and changed this file. You'll notice that there's a new Git tab here on the panels. And at this point there's nothing going on there, but once I go back here and save this, you'll see that there's now a file called readme.md that has an M for modified. So I want to now make this change that I've made on my local repository on RStudio. I want to have this actually proceed to be available elsewhere on the web and in other places for other people who might have access to this repository. So I click on here and type commit. This will open up a prompt where I have a commit message I'll put in. These should be kind of informative and relatively short to give it kind of an overview. Added some more details for the description of the repository. So I can go ahead now and commit this change. It's gone ahead and added those. And you'll now see, if I go back to GitHub interface, that it'll say my branch is ahead of origin master by one commit. I've made a commit which I've not yet sent back to the main GitHub site. If I click on this push button, this will actually now again prompt me for my passphrase, and it'll go ahead now and make that change, and it's actually now updated things on GitHub. You can see there's nothing else going on in terms of my environment here. I could go ahead and create other files, do other kinds of things. But let's see what it looks like on the other end. I'm here on my test student. Let me go ahead and refresh this. And you can now see this has been updated. It says there was added some more details for the description of the repository, and we actually have this line here in place for the repository. GitHub can be really valuable, really very helpful to keep projects, to be able to make materials available on the web and other types of uses. Again, I think we'll find it very useful throughout the course, and I hope this will help you get started setting up and accessing your repository on the RStudio server.